The sterile white walls of the hospital room seemed to pulse, almost as if they were alive, breathing in sync with the beeping machines that surrounded Brianna's bed. The room was filled with the faint hum of medical equipment, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. The scent of antiseptic hung in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of flowers left by well-wishers. Jim felt a cold sweat clinging to him, his shirt sticking uncomfortably to his back. He wiped his forehead with a trembling hand, his mind racing with worry and fear. The room felt both too hot and too cold, a paradox that mirrored his inner turmoil. He glanced at the clock on the wall, its hands moving agonizingly slow, each tick echoing in his ears like a countdown to an uncertain fate. His wife, Brianna, lay asleep, her face pale and drawn, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman she once was. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, each one a struggle. The dark circles under her eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights, of battles fought in the realm of dreams. Jim reached out to touch her hand, feeling the coolness of her skin, a chill that seemed to seep into his very soul. She had been like this since their visit to Helen, his grandmother. That visit had been meant to be a simple family reunion, a chance to reconnect with the past, but it had turned into something far more sinister. Helen had always been a figure of mystery, her eyes holding secrets that she never fully revealed. Jim remembered the way she had looked at them, her gaze piercing, as if she could see into their very souls. Helen with her stories, her warnings about the basement. She had spoken in hushed tones, her voice trembling with fear. "Stay away from the basement," she had said, her eyes wide with terror. "There are things down there that should never be disturbed." Jim had dismissed her words as the ramblings of an old woman, but now he wasn't so sure. The fear in her eyes had been real, and it had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Their old family home, a Victorian mansion on the edge of town, held a darkness. It was a place of shadows and whispers where the past seemed to linger in every corner. The house had always felt alive, its walls echoing with the memories of those who had lived and died within its confines. Jim had grown up hearing stories about the mansion, tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena, but he had never truly believed them until now. Jim had always felt it, a sense of unease that he could never quite shake. It was as if the house was watching him, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. He had tried to ignore it, to convince himself that it was all in his head. But the feeling had only grown stronger over the years, a constant presence that he could never escape. And now, with Brianna lying in that hospital bed, he couldn't help but wonder if the house had finally claimed its next victim. The basement, in particular, was a place of dread. It was a dark, damp space that seemed to swallow the light, a place where shadows danced and whispered secrets. Jim had always avoided it, the very thought of going down there sending a shiver down his spine. He remembered the stories his grandmother had told him, tales of strange noises and ghostly apparitions, but he had never truly believed them until now. Helen had forbidden them from going down there, her voice raspy with fear. "There are things in that basement that should never be disturbed," she had said, her eyes wide with terror. "Things that can never be explained." Jim had dismissed her words as the ramblings of an old woman, but now he wasn't so sure. The fear in her eyes had been real, and it had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. But Brianna, ever the skeptic, had insisted. She had always been the rational one, the one who needed to see things for herself. "It's just an old basement," she had said, her voice filled with determination. "There's nothing down there but dust and cobwebs." Jim had tried to dissuade her, but she had been adamant, and so they had gone down into the basement and everything had changed.
Now, Brianna was plagued by nightmares. Every night she would wake up screaming, her eyes wide with terror. She would clutch at the sheets, her body trembling with fear. Jim would hold her, trying to comfort her, but nothing seemed to help. The nightmares were relentless, a constant reminder of the darkness they had unleashed. She would wake up screaming, her eyes wide with terror. The doctors were baffled. They had run every test, tried every treatment, but nothing seemed to work. They couldn't explain what was happening to her, and that only made things worse. Jim could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. They were supposed to have all the answers, but in this case, they were just as lost as he was. Jim knew the truth though. It was the basement. It was real. He could feel it in his bones, a deep primal fear that he couldn't shake. He had seen things down there, things that defied explanation, and now he was paying the price for his curiosity. He had unleashed something dark and terrible, and he didn't know how to stop it. All he could do was hope that Brianna would find the strength to fight it, to overcome the darkness that had taken hold of her. But deep down, he knew that the battle was far from over.
Jim, a struggling writer, was desperate for answers. He had been working on his novel for years, pouring his heart and soul into every word, but something was missing. The story lacked the spark that would make it come alive. He spent countless nights at his desk, staring at the blank pages, hoping for inspiration to strike. But it never did. The pressure was mounting, and he felt like he was running out of time. His publisher was growing impatient, and Jim knew that if he didn't deliver soon, his dream of becoming a successful author would slip through his fingers. He needed a breakthrough, something to reignite his passion and bring his story to life. He loved Brianna, her adventurous spirit, a beacon in his own life. She was the light that guided him through the darkest times, always encouraging him to chase his dreams and never give up. Brianna was a free spirit, always seeking new experiences and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Her zest for life was infectious, and Jim couldn't help but be drawn to her. They had met in college, and from the moment he saw her, he knew she was special. She had a way of making everything seem possible, and her unwavering support had been the driving force behind his writing. But lately things had changed. Brianna's once bright and vibrant personality had dimmed, and Jim couldn't understand why. But her curiosity had led them down a dangerous path. It all started when they moved into the old house on the outskirts of town. The house had a history, one that was shrouded in mystery and whispers of dark secrets. Brianna had been fascinated by the stories, eager to uncover the truth behind the rumors. She had convinced Jim to move in, believing that the house would provide the inspiration he needed for his novel. At first, it seemed like a great idea. The house was full of character, with its creaky floors and hidden nooks. But as they began to explore, they discovered that some doors were better left unopened. Brianna's curiosity had led them to the basement, a place that seemed to hold a malevolent presence. He had to fix this. Jim couldn't stand to see Brianna suffer, and he was determined to find a way to help her. He spent hours researching the history of the house, trying to uncover any clues that might explain the strange occurrences. He reached out to local historians, scoured old newspapers, and even visited the town's library in search of answers. But the more he learned, the more he realized that the house's dark past was deeply rooted in the town's history. It was as if the house itself was alive, feeding off the fear and despair of its inhabitants. Jim knew that he had to find a way to break the cycle, to free Brianna from the grip of the darkness that had taken hold of her. He had to protect her. Jim's love for Brianna was unwavering, and he would do anything to keep her safe. He became her rock, always there to comfort her when the nightmares became too much to bear. He held her close, whispering words of reassurance and promising that they would find a way out of this. But deep down, he was terrified. The darkness that had taken hold of Brianna was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and he feared that it was only a matter of time before it consumed her completely. He couldn't let that happen. He had to find a way to save her, no matter the cost.
Brianna, usually so vibrant, was now a shell of her former self. The once adventurous and spirited woman he had fallen in love with was now plagued by fear and uncertainty. She felt like a prisoner in her own home, unable to escape the shadows that seemed to follow her everywhere. The joy she once found in exploring new places and trying new things had been replaced by a constant sense of dread. She couldn't understand what was happening to her, and the more she tried to remember, the more the memories seemed to slip away. It was as if the house itself was erasing her past, leaving her with nothing but the fear of the unknown. The nightmares haunted her, filled with whispers and shadows. Every night she would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing and her mind filled with images she couldn't quite grasp. The dreams were always the same, a dark figure lurking in the shadows, watching her every move. She could hear its whispers, but the words were always just out of reach. The fear was overwhelming, and she felt like she was losing her grip on reality. She tried to tell Jim about the dreams, but the words seemed to fail her. How could she explain something that she didn't even understand herself? All she knew was that the darkness was real, and it was getting closer. She couldn't remember what she had seen in the basement, but the fear was real, visceral. It was as if a part of her mind had been locked away, hidden behind a wall of terror. She had tried to piece together the fragments of her memory, but every time she got close, the fear would take over, and she would be left with nothing but a sense of impending doom. The basement had become a place of nightmares, a place she couldn't escape from even in her waking hours. She could feel its presence, always lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. She knew that she had to find a way to remember, to uncover the truth behind the darkness that had taken hold of her.
Helen, old and frail, was consumed by guilt. She had lived in the house for most of her life, and she knew its secrets better than anyone. She had seen the darkness take hold of others before, and she had always tried to warn them. But her warnings had always fallen on deaf ears. She had hoped that Jim and Brianna would be different, that they would listen to her and stay away from the basement. But they hadn't, and now they were paying the price. Helen felt a deep sense of responsibility for what was happening to them, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she had failed them. She had tried to warn them, to keep them safe. She had told them about the history of the house, about the darkness that seemed to linger in the basement. But they had been so eager to uncover the truth, so determined to find answers, that they had ignored her warning. Helen had watched as Brianna's curiosity led them deeper into the darkness, and she had known that it was only a matter of time before the house claimed them. She had tried to intervene, to stop them from going any further, but it had been too late. The darkness had already taken hold, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The basement was a power she couldn't explain, a darkness that stretched back generations. It was as if the very walls of the house were alive, feeding off the fear and despair of those who lived there. Helen had seen it happen before, and she knew that it was only a matter of time before the darkness claimed another victim. She had tried to keep the secrets of the basement hidden, to protect those who lived in the house from its malevolent presence. But the darkness was relentless, always finding a way to seep through the cracks and take hold of those who dared to venture too close. She had hoped to take its secrets to her grave. Helen had spent her life trying to protect others from the darkness, but she knew that the time was not right. She was old and frail, and she didn't have the strength to fight it. She had hoped that by keeping the secrets of the basement hidden, she could protect those who lived in the house from its malevolent presence. But now, as she watched Jim and Brianna struggle against the darkness, she realized that she had failed. The secrets of the basement were too powerful to keep, and she knew that it was only a matter of time before the darkness claimed another victim. She could only hope that Jim and Brianna would find a way to escape, to break free from the grip of the darkness that had taken hold of them.